Before we dive in, this week's episode is brought to you by my free cheat sheet, 30 Top Tips to Find Time to Write. In this guide, I give you 30 ways that you can find time to write in the small gaps that appear between the various errands and tasks and responsibilities that you have in your day-to-day life. Now, you might be thinking that you don't have any time to spare, but I can guarantee these top tips will give you writing time you didn't think you had. If you thought writing always involved a pen and paper or a keyboard, think again. If you thought you needed at least an hour at a time to write your manuscript, I help you reframe that. You won't be disappointed. Get your free copy of 30 Top Tips to Find Time to Write by going to emmadesi.com/30 top tips. Okay, let's dive in to today's episode. Sharon Hughson loves stories, having escaped into them for many, many years, and she understands the struggles that writers face to finish a book, get it ready for a publisher's eyes, and then getting it into readers' hands. The journey can be soul-sucking, she says, when you try doing it alone. As a certified Hope Writers coach, Sharon ascribes to ICF standards. With experience as a published author and a freelance editor, Sharon cannot wait to be your Story Sensei, plot wizard, and brainstorming buddy. We're going to find out more about Sharon's journey to writing, more about her own fiction, and of course how she can help you to start, finish and publish your very own novel. So let's hear what Sharon's got to say. Well, welcome Sharon. I'm so glad to have you on the show because we've been sort of in each other's world for a little while now. So it's lovely to finally get you on the podcast.
I am so fortunate to be here with you.
Well, I wondered if you wouldn't mind sharing with us all just about your journey to writing and to where you are now.
Okay, well, I feel like I've been writing my whole life. I wrote my first book. Yes, that is in quotation marks. When I was in third grade, it was called The Horse Killer. Ooh. I wrote it in a spiral notebook and I still have it, as well as my second and third books that I wrote in spiral notebooks when I was a kid. So I have loved reading and writing pretty much my whole life. And I always dreamed of being a published author, but back when I was in school, it was not touted as something realistic. You were, but what's going to be your real job while you pursue that on the side? And of course, the publishing industry, as it was then, was very difficult to break into anyway, and not necessarily lucrative. So, I mean, it makes sense that your parents and your teachers or whatever want you to have a better plan than that, right? So it's really exciting to me that we have this new paradigm for publishing. So you don't have to wait for the gatekeepers to say, yes, you're good enough. So you don't have to go through all those hoops. I mean, you can choose to, or you can choose to self-publish, and it can be lucrative, not like vanity presses, which was the only way to self-publish when I first started writing so many years ago. So it's really, to me, I'm excited by it. I have been published by three different small indie presses, as well as just doing some self-publishing. So I'm kind of familiar with both tracks. Yeah. And I just still love to write. I fall into stories and get lost in those worlds, whether I'm reading them or writing them. So
tell us about your fiction, because you've written across a couple of different genres. So tell us about it.
Yes, I have. So I have self-published some of the stuff that was previously traditionally published once I got my rights back. But the first thing I self-published was A Pondering Heart in my Reflections series, and that's a biblical fictionalization series. And that story actually just kind of came to me out of the blue, and I didn't want to write it. I fought against writing it for a couple of years, and then I would write a few scenes, and then I'd be like, no, I didn't want to publish it because I've read biblical fiction. It's not like my favorite genre or anything. I've read it just because I think it gives me an interesting, I told you. It's just, okay. So it's because I feel like there's a lot of pressure on that to get it biblically accurate,
Right.
and that I'm not a scholar of that time. So I also don't know whether or not I'd be able to portray life in the first century Israel in a good manner. So, but what I do have is a friend that I graduated from high school with. He has a degree. He's a doctor, and he is a practicing Jew, but he's a Messianic Jew. So he does believe that Jesus Christ is the Messiah, but he has a degree in, his degree is in first century Jewish culture. So he read my books to make sure that they were not out of the world, out of the realm. And
it's so interesting that you resisted doing it, but still there was this pull, there was this like calling to say, no, this is what you've got to write.
You have to write it. See, that's the thing about being a writer. The stories won't, if they need to be written, they won't let you go. I know a lot of people are like, well, if I don't write this, then I'm going to lose it. And I'm like, well, that hasn't necessarily been my experience. If the story wants to be written, it is going to keep after you until you write it down. Yeah. So I have 3 books in that series. And then I have 2 sweet Christian romances, both that were published with Sweet Promise Press originally, but when I got my rights back, I went ahead and republished them. So one is about a middle-aged second chances romance, and the other is about a cowboy, and it's a former soldier and a cowboy. And it was written originally as 3 novellas that they published together as in a collection, and I just put them so you have the whole meet cute through the happily ever after in one volume now. So anyway, that is what I have for that. I do have a few other things on there that might be considered nonfiction, but my passion is really for fiction.
I didn't know that you'd gone through a small press as well. Is there anything you can sort of spring to mind that was the main difference between working with a small press and being indie, either good or bad?
So the good is that they have a wider reader base than what I have for myself. So my work was published out or pressed out and presented to their wider base. For example, Sweet Promise Press had a base of like 10,000 readers. And so every time they released, 10,000 readers would hear about your release. And so I got, quite a few sales there. Most indie presses are really good about, they pay you in royalties only, most of them, and you get half of the net. So that is also a much better pay rate than you would get from most big traditional publishers who publish or give you quite a bit less than that. And since they require an agent, your agent is taking a cut of all that as well. So, it's...
Okay. Well, that's good to know. It's interesting, it's just, there's no right or wrong, is there? But it's interesting to know what your experience was and your sort of takeaways, and there's always good and bad. So it's, nice to have that kind of immediate exposure without having to do a Facebook ad or something like that, right. Just to know that the press already have a readership. Right. Thanks for sharing that with us. So I know that not only are you a passionate writer, but you're also passionate about helping other writers. And your website has a fantastic resources page. Can you share with us the sorts of resources you've got up there for aspiring writers?
Okay, great. So I need to update it again because a lot of the bulk is posts. My blog posts that I've written based on my experiences or whatever about specific things so that they can find those. So it's an easy way for them to find something if they're going to pitch their book to an agent. Well, I have posts about that. Or if they're, trying to find an editor. Well, I have posts about that. So, the other thing I do is I have linked to quite a few other great resources on the web, like One Stop for Writers and Kristen Lamb, who is amazing about about helping indie writers promote themselves on social media. And so there's just a lot of resources like that I found as I was starting out trying to go, help me, I need information. Well, these ones that are just so fantastic, then I have linked those as well, because like you said, I want to help writers. And I remember what it felt like to be a newbie and go, okay, where do I start?
Yeah.
And so,
because it's an ever-changing world, isn't it? And so there's always kind of things to be kept abreast of. And
right.
you also have a lovely community in your Facebook group called Write Your Book Nook, which is a great title. If anybody wants to join that group, what can they expect from being a member?
So I post 6 days a week, something. A lot of times it might be a motivational quote, or it could be a question. I have given away critiques in the past, and so I like to do that because paid critiquer is one of my multiple jobs, freelance jobs that I have to try and make ends meet, because we all know that author pay still isn't necessarily top notch. So I do that. I do weekly lives where I have, before it's been courses, which I'm sliding that onto a YouTube channel, but I still go live usually and give a tip. And every member is encouraged to post if they have a question. So I've had members say, hey, I'm looking for beta readers. I've had members going, here's my story I did. Does it sound good? And different things like that. So it's a place where it's a safe space for writers to ask questions about whatever they want. Usually at least twice a month, I have a post that says, hey, ask me, what are you struggling with? Ask me about it right now. I want to help you.
Yeah.
So to remind people that I am there as a resource for that, and not just me. All the other writers will have varied experiences as well. So they can also answer and give feedback about questions that are there. So I really wanted to be at that safe space for writers to just know that they could even come and rant as long as they were not digging on anyone else, because sometimes you just have a bad day, or your computer doesn't back up and then the drive fries and you're like, I just lost everything I wrote the last 2 weeks, or, and no one understands that, those struggles and those pains and that anxiety as much as another group of writers will.
Absolutely.
They just don't.
Yeah, your group is really active. There's I see lots of comments coming through it, lots of people responding. It's definitely a very encouraging place. And I agree, when you've got a sort of a safe space like that, then it's a really good place to mind the hive mind and see what other people are doing and brainstorming, and just putting a problem out there, because who knows what will come back, and it might just be the answer you need, or it might spark an idea that becomes the answer that you need. So it's a great group you've got. So I recommend people dig it out. So it's called Write Your Book Nook. Lovely title. But that's not all you do. Oh my goodness, you're such a busy lady. You are also a book coach. You've been coaching for quite a while now, but you recently invested in yourself and you became certified with Hope Writers. So a big congratulations on that, because I know that takes, it's a lot of work and a lot of not just financial investment, but it's a lot of time and energy investment, and it shows that you really care and are passionate about the writers that you help. How was the experience of going through that accreditation?
It was great. I have been coaching since September of last year, so 2020, I guess. I don't know when this podcast goes live, so I guess it could be 2 years ago. Yeah. Anyway, so since September of 2020, that's when I took my first client on, and I kind of was just, hey, how can I help you? I'm going to use my experience type of thing. And my clients were all very pleased with that, but I felt like that's not really the total of coaching. I have had several different coaches myself, which I just wrote recently about on my blog, because I think that all of us can use coaching in various areas. So it was great to get a format, a methodology, and to understand the process from that perspective of what coaching really is. Because according to Hope Writers' ideology of, my idea of coaching was kind of a teamwork, like we both are equally into it. And their thought is that the writer who's coming to me has all the answers they need for themselves. And my job is just to question them, to help them find those answers, to mine those answers from within themselves. And I love that idea. As a matter of fact, our coaching director of coaching called it a thought partnership. Oh, and nice. I think I think that's an awesome verbiage to use to think about that. So you said a book coach, and my understanding of a book coach is someone who coaches you through the project of a book. So they come to you and they have a project and they want you to help them through the process. And a lot of those also include critiques. Whereas what Hope Writers is promoting is just individual sessions where you would have whatever your struggle might be, and you work through it until you work through it, and then you come up with the next one. And so that's how they do it. And myself, I kind of vision myself more as a story coach because, as you said, I love working with writers. Well, I love talking about stories with writers. I love brainstorming ideas for stories. I love asking them about, well, wait, what about that motivation or the character's background or all this stuff that's really important to get a great grasp of if you're going to have a successful book, a successful fiction story. So
I agree. I think I agree. I like that approach, similar to Hope Writers, that the answer is there inside the individual. It's in their brain somewhere. It's all kind of there, but asking the right questions, asking the right prompts, even being a bit challenging sometimes, so that there's a response that then brings out that answer. I love that approach. I love seeing it when suddenly a client or a student suddenly has that aha moment and they realize what the answer is and how they need to go forward. And so do you also help through your coaching, talking about the story, uncovering all of that? Do you also help sort of with the structure of the story and helping them get through, all the plot points that they need to get through, getting that right arc into the climax, that kind of thing?
Yes. So the one client who's been with me the longest, we worked through her first draft, and yes, it was very much that. We lined out all the beats. She ended up writing the synopsis 2 different times to get to me, because to me, that's how you can get, even if she does want to go traditionally, so she will need that synopsis for submitting. But even if you were going to be indie, it still helps you get a pulse, like, do I have a complete story here? And so that's kind of what we use to help her through that. And she is signing on with me in January to work through the revision process of that manuscript. So I feel like that's a pretty good,
it's a good indication,
acclamation that she felt like it was very successful working with me. So I think it depends on what the writer wants. But indeed, if they say, help me make my story right, I would definitely be talking about what structure plan they used. Because there are different ones, as far as they're all really the same, but they kind of use different words and different plot points and whatever. And what kind of writers do you like to work with? Or maybe I should ask, first of all, do you like working with specific genres? Do you write with fiction, non-fiction, memoir? Do you work with writers across the board, or do you specialize? I worked with nonfiction and memoir, as well as some fiction writers for my practicum, for my 35 practice hours that I needed to get my certification. And I really enjoyed working with all of them. It's just different, the way that you work with each kind. And it depends really on the struggles of the writer that they come to you with. So like the memoirist, she was really a very beginning writer, and she felt very insecure about her abilities to write. And so it was working through those things, which, hey, I've been published for 7 years and I still have those insecurities sometimes. So it's like I totally relate and get that. So if I'm going to work on stories, romance, women's fiction, fantasy, young adults, those are the genres I read the most. And so I feel like I would be upfront with any writer that came to me to let them know that most of my experience would come with those, is about those genres. But I think the knowledge of structure kind of translates across the board. But, genre expectations are a real thing. And so that's something that self-published writers really need to be cognizant of, that their readers have an expectation. And so your story needs to measure up to those expectations that readers have.
Yes, absolutely, 100%. Just trying to think, because you offer so many, you have many offerings for your clients. Is there something I haven't mentioned or forgotten to ask? I think you do developmental editing, is that right?
I do editing too. I like developmental editing is my favorite type. I do copy edit and proofread as well. I actually have a proofreading job on my desktop right now to do once we finish this call. But I like developmental editing the best because if you don't get that story right, I think it connects in with my love of wanting to be a story coach. Mm-hmm. That if you don't have all those pieces in place, your story is not going to satisfy. Mm. And so the best place to get that is with your developmental editor to point out those things and help you fix all that and strengthen it so you have the strongest, best story possible. Yeah. What I will say about my editing is it's a lot less expensive than what I paid for my editing, because I feel like a lot of people who want to be self-published don't have a lot of money to spend, but I want them to be able to still put out their high quality product. Mm-hmm. And to do that, you need an editor. Mm-hmm. And the other thing is that my mindset of it is always about your style, your story, mm-hmm. your message, and not mine. It's not about me. But the truth is that if you don't hit those structure points, you're not going to be able to get the message out. Your story isn't going to resonate the way that you want it to. Mm-hmm. So as a developmental editor, I'm picking up those things about that, as well as character development. That is such a huge thing. And when I first started writing, that was where I completely was terrible, because I just wanted to tell the story. And mm-hmm. You don't realize how much that character motivation and their arc is really tied in with the good stories that you love. Yeah. And so that was something that I spent several years going through craft courses and whatever to strengthen that aspect of my writing. So. Yeah,
I think it's quite common, isn't it, amongst new writers? We get very hung up or very focused on the plot line and making sure that we get the plot line. And it can be easy to forget actually that character is equally as important, and they sort of marry with one another. I'm certainly the same. It was so, I think I read every kind of plot book out there trying to find the right type of structure that was going to work for me, when really if I'd spent a little bit more time on the character, perhaps it might have been slightly easy for that story to move along a bit more organically. It's interesting. I remember what I did want to ask you, because you'd mentioned that you have used coaching in the past as well, or you still do. What do you feel is kind of one of the benefits of working with a coach as opposed to just going it alone?
So going it alone is just hard. Finding the right coach is important. I've worked with 4 different coaches, but all of them were for different things. I went to a coach's coach to help me build my coaching business. And I went to a business and a writing business marketing coach to help me with my launches. Yeah. And then a creativity coach is the other type of coach that I went to, because I was kind of in writer's burnout for a couple of years, and I was struggling to try and get my creativity back. My well was empty, and I was having a hard time struggling with that. Mm-hmm. And so it really helped to talk to someone who that is her focus, and that she was certified with that, how to work on creativity and build that. So I think that a lot of times we don't even know what we need or what our story needs or whatever. And having an outside person be able to look in, they have a different perspective that can offer us insights. And like you said, that aha moment is the best thing to see I was a teacher before. I was in education for more than a decade before I became a writer. And it was the same with students when they would have that aha moment, like, I get it. Oh, wow. Okay. This totally makes sense. Yeah. And it gives you such joy to see that moment happen. And writing is a solitary profession. You write in your office by yourself. All of us do. Mm-hmm. That's what we do. We're encouraged to shut our door and get, so you can't be interrupted so we can get into our story. Okay, great. Except for sometimes you get stuck. Mm-hmm. So, and when you first start out, you don't know when your writing's good enough. So you really do need someone who's more experienced, who's farther down the line, who can help you suss out those answers. Mm-hmm. And so I guess my thing is, why go it alone when you don't have to? I think about me 10 years ago when I first started, okay, I'm going to get serious and I'm going to submit, and bumbling along. And what I wish there had been writing coaches back then, but there weren't. It's a newer thing. You know what I'm saying? And so it's like, why go it alone if you don't have to?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Makes the journey so much more fun. Takes a lot of the pressure off, doesn't it? Of just feeling like you've got the whole weight of the world on you and only you can do this. And I think in no other profession, even other artistic professions, I don't think anyone else does this quite so alone. If you think about, you know, songwriters or artists or sculptors, there's a community there. Yes, they might have to do the painting and the sculpting alone, but it's with a teacher, with a guide, with a mentor. But for some reason, I don't know where it's come from, we feel that as writers, we should be able to do it all by ourselves, even though it's a really, really difficult intellectual endeavor. But yeah, we still think we've got to do it all by ourselves. It's a funny one. It's a conundrum to me, I have to admit.
It is very strange.
But let's change tack a little bit, because I'd like to come back to your own fiction. And I'm wondering, do you have time for your own fiction still? And if you do, what are you writing?
Well, I did do National Novel Writing Month, and as I went through it, I decided this was probably my last year doing it. So I did it. The first time I did it was in 2013. I became aware of it even before that because there was a teacher at the middle school where I worked, who did it every year. And he was like, I think you have a novel in you. You should do this, da, da, da. But I would love to talk about why National Novel Writing Month is beneficial for a writer, especially a beginning writer, but we don't have to talk about that here. And I did not write a novel. I wrote short stories. And actually, I wrote 2 different worlds of connected short stories that I was thinking, oh, maybe I could do the Kindle-Vella thing with these. Oh, I don't know if you're aware of that. That's the new episodic fiction that you do. And so I talked to one of my author friends who is doing it. And so I was like, oh, well, maybe I would use that for that. But where I started my being published was with short stories. And because I've kind of been waffling about what novel idea inspires me or is drawing me in, and that's a huge undertaking, as you know, as a published novelist yourself, I thought, I don't want to write something if it's not really the thing I should be writing. Mm-hmm. So I've kind of went back to writing shorts. So I entered a few flash fiction contests, and I'm writing some short stories. And so my goal for 2022 is to submit short and see if I can get some more short stories out there. But that's where I started. I have 5 or 6 anthologies where I have short stories published in them. Mm-hmm. So that is where I started. And the benefit of writing short is incredible for building your muscles, your writing muscles, because you have to be concise. You have to get it done. And I think that it may actually have impeded my ability to be a novelist, that I wrote short stories and then novellas first.
Yeah.
Because I'm so used to condensing my story into a short space that it's difficult then to flesh it out. Like I wrote a women's fiction book that was really close and dear to my heart, and it was 72,000 words, and I pitched it, and everyone I pitched it to at the conference was like, oh, we like the story idea, but we wouldn't even look at it until it was 80,000 words or more.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah.
And so it was like, wait, what? I had already fleshed it out, because it had started out as a short story that just I couldn't let go of. And I kept fleshing it. So
do you think short stories are where your heart is, actually, that's your first call?
And I really am leaning toward that. I'm going, which is something I'm going to be working through with my writing coach.
Yeah.
Is there a reason why I think I have to be a novelist? What's wrong with just writing short and being a short story writer? Mm-hmm. Because I definitely have always felt that call. And even between novels, there'd be times when I'd have a short story idea and I just, whip it out. Yeah. Because that's a great thing about something that's 5,000-6,000 words. It doesn't take you very long to write it. And so you can get it out and you go, yes, all right, now send me the next one.
Yeah.
So
that nice feeling of completion.
We do like our new ideas, don't we? And so with a short story, hey, you get to the next new idea a lot quicker.
Well, Sharon, thank you so much for our conversation today. I've loved learning more about you and everything that you do. But if our viewers would like to learn more, where can they find out?
So the best place to find me is at my website, SharonHughson.com. And you can find out everything about me there, my books, my services, and of course, that resource page that you like. And I've had other writers say, wow, that's pretty incredible. So that as well. If they are on Facebook, Write Your Book Nook. They can find it, but they'll have to ask to join it before they can post or see all the other posts. But no big deal for that. So if that Facebook is a place they like to go, that's a free coaching resource for them. So those are the two best places to find me.
Wonderful. Well, I'll make sure that we have the links to those in the show notes. Sharon, thank you again. It's been lovely.
Yes. Have a wonderful day. And thanks for having me.
Before you go, here's a word from my friend Stephen Schneider over at Discovered Wordsmiths podcast.
Hey, this is Stephen Schneider, and I know that doesn't matter because you have no idea who I am. Well, I run a podcast called Discovered Wordsmiths. This is a great podcast where we talk with brand new authors, people you've not heard of, but probably should because they have some really great books and a lot of great information that they've learned as new authors. So if you're interested, run out right now. In fact, go. It's going to disappear. You got to do it quick. Just whatever you're listening to this on, use that and look us up. That'd probably be easier. So anyway, it's Discovered Wordsmiths. Check us out.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you found that helpful and inspirational. Now, don't forget to come on over to Facebook and join my group, Turning Readers into Writers. It is especially for you if you are a beginner writer who is looking to write their first novel. If you join the group, you will also find a free cheat sheet there called 3 Secret Hacks to Write with Consistency. So go to emmadesi.com/turning readers into writers, hit join. Can't wait to see you in there. All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.